Chapter 8, Telling the Truth in a Couple. There is something lost and something gained in coupling up. You give away a lot of power and freedom when you get in a relationship. I have had a few times between marriages when I could do any goddamn thing I wanted to without having to account for some woman for it. Every time, after a while, I traded my freedom in for the greater act of creation and the other form of freedom of a committed relationship. I am greatly prejudiced in the direction of the benefits of a committed relationship exceeding the deficits, partly because I don't think you can beat loving and being loved by a child, even though when you have children, your entire life gets organized around them and limited for a lot of years. There are also great advantages in sharing the work of survival with another person. I have been married 4 times before the marriage I have now. Every time I would go on talk shows, the host or hosts would always ask the question, "Oh, so you've been married 4 times. Is that evidence of how well radical honesty works?" I tell them, "Oh, yes. And I've been in a lot of other committed relationships with people I'm not married to also, which were like being married, and we split up too. Can you think of a better way to become an expert? I've had 4 successful marriages and a number of other successful relationships and a bunch of successful divorces and separations. The truth is, you would have to take my marriages and relationship stories one at a time to assess how radically honest I was in them and how much it had to do with how well we lived together and how we parted. My previous marriage, after I was older, 36 to 59, and had learned more, has been the most successful. Amy and I were together for 23 years. We are divorced now, but still friends and still live near each other and are co-parenting our 12-year-old son, Elijah. Through the generosity of her opening to me over and over again, I learned to practice what I preach here. Her unwillingness to be limited to any category I have had for her, and her willingness to engage with me in the great conversation about what it is to be a human being, has taught me more than any of my formal education. Her listening to what I say and hearing it sometimes clearer than how I speak it, and her acts of co-creation with me helped me for many years to stay awake and alive. Our conscious, committed interest in the great conversation, the 3,000-year-old ongoing dialogue of Western civilization, is a vital background of our relationship to each other. A second vital background is our dependable mutual commitment to telling the truth. I am not, as an individual, willing to kiss anybody's ass by lying to them, and neither is she, and that included each other when we were married, and is still true now that we are divorced. This relationship with Amy has been a voluntary imprisonment in growing. The best things we have done together, like having our children, Carson and Elijah, and helping raise my daughter, Shanti, and my son, Amos, from childhood to adolescence, and keeping engaged with them as adults, and helping for a while in raising my 2 nephews, Zeke and Casey, and maintaining a house and budget and jobs to pay for them, and building a house in the mountains, writing this book initially, are things I probably couldn't have done without her. She couldn't have done these things without me either. Each of us is a powerful person in our own right because of our separate commitments to learning, training, growing, and creating our lives, because of having each other to learn from, and because of a lot of other couples from whom we both learned. We have participated in a lot of trainings together and conducted a lot of couples groups and trainings ourselves. Landmark Education comes to mind. I don't know how other folks who don't do this kind of work on themselves can stand staying together. Actually, I do know how they do it, and sometimes it's not a pretty sight. Amy and I lived together for 6 years before we got married. Then we were married for 16 years. Then we separated for 3 years. Then we got divorced. We got along together pretty well, but getting along together was not all rosy. We got mad and split up a few times during that 23 years, but the separations never lasted more than a few days. When we decided to split up a little over 3 years ago, it was mostly Amy's decision, but I supported her in that choice. She wanted to live alone and pursue her career as a singer-songwriter and to not live in my shadow anymore, and to not have to put up with my drinking and golfing and life of travel and workshops and book promotion. We got together when she was 19 and I was 36, and she had lived with me into her 40s, and she wanted to see what life on her own without a man would be like, and to have the freedom to create all her life without having to help me or lean on me. She also wanted to go out with other men. We tried having an open marriage for a while again, but that didn't suit either one of us, so she moved out. Carsey was 14 and Elijah was 6, and they had a hard time with it, but we stayed in close proximity and stayed with them a lot, and we all worked through it. Now we are all pretty happy with how we are together. Carsey is 18 and living on her own, and Elijah spends 3 or 4 nights with each of us every week, or with one or other of us when the other is traveling. Amy and I still love each other, and we are still friends, but we live separately and we don't sleep together anymore. Because of our children and our history together and our common friends, we will be related until we die, and we are doing a pretty good job of that in this new phase of our relationship. Being related in divorce depends on honesty and sharing as much of being related in a marriage. Being related in divorce depends on honesty and sharing as much as being related in marriage, particularly when you have kids together. Divorce is a commitment too. I am telling you about all of this to be honest, but I am also telling you about all of this because we are, all of us, in these times, trying to figure out how to be related to each other, and our kids, and our exes, and our new loved ones. And to do it in such a way as to feel good about ourselves, and take care of each other, and support each other. It is in all of the crucibles that love and life is made to work or not. I think that honesty is critical in the quality of commitment in all committed relationships, including marriage and divorce. Living together in close proximity is one of the toughest things human beings can do. Over half of the marriages in this country end in divorce. But the tragedy is not the divorce rate. The tragedy is that of the remaining 47% or so of people who stay together, most of those relationships suck. At least half of the relationships between people who stay together in marriage are angry, codependent, dead unions based on fear, lethargy, and shame. They are based on fear and the idea that it's better to be with the devil you know than to be alone or with a devil you don't know. These people live together in a kind of variable form of ongoing pain and deadness, halfway between divorce and the emergency room. Of the slightly less than 25% of people who stay married still remaining, my guess is that maybe half are passive, intellectual space cadet compromises of the sort that make up your standard middle-class survival system, the socially acceptable dysfunctional family. It seems a little extravagant to say that 12.5% of the couples that pair up have good, alive, intimate, honest, functional relationships. But what the hell? I'm feeling generous. This cheery information is not based on science, but is informed speculation on my part. I have, in addition to coupling a lot myself, seen a lot of couples and run a lot of couples therapy groups and had a lot of couples in workshops over the years. I have helped a lot of people fall in love, and I have helped a lot of people fall in love again after they fell out. But even though the accuracy of my estimates on how many relationships are successful is scientifically somewhat questionable, so is science. So what the hell? I make a few recommendations and give examples of what can help based on what I know from my experience with others. Wisdom may come of this and be better than mere knowledge anyway.